Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of the Let's Dream podcast. Today we have another dreamer interview, and the username is Jabin for the interviewee. He is someone that I've met over the dream forums, and we've had a lot of really interesting discussions. He works in IT and public care and is a very outdoorsy guy, enjoys reading books and cooking, but most importantly, he regularly participates in the Lucid Dream forums. Some of you may have interacted with him, and also reads up a lot on the lucid dreaming literature and stays current with the research. I think all of you will really enjoy what he has to say and the things that we go over in this interview. So without further ado, please enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Dream podcast. I've been waiting for this interview for a while. I have you saved as the Dream Jedi, and I've learned a lot from you. And
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
I think you have a lot of really interesting things to say. And then, first of all, for the listeners, we have Jabin on the podcast, and I think our listeners will really appreciate this interview. So we've discussed a lot of things having to do with dreams and lucid dreaming in our private conversations, but I think we'll start off with a really basic, and then we'll get really deep. We'll get deep into the world of dreams. But
that's good.
First and foremost, how long would you say you've been interested in dreams and being an avid dreamer and lucid dreamer?
I mean, I think I've been interested in lucid dreaming, or in dreaming in general since I was like a little kid. So I kind of grew up in a religious type of environment that encouraged you to just really pay attention to dreams because they might have some meaning from whatever. And even though I'm not religious now, I still, like, my parents fostered like a healthy love of dreams and encouraged me to write them down. So since I was a kid and a teenager, I have old dream journals that just are kind of cringy to read, but they're still there.
Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up because I was joking with my fiance a little while ago. Like, some of my dream journal, like from when I was a teenager, I would go back and read them, and it's just like, oh man, this is just like, yeah, cringeworthy is the best way to explain it. Yeah, and very sexual dreams.
Yeah, I mean, that comes with the age.
Yeah, but okay. So yeah, you have a long love for dreams like myself. So the next question then, and this is just kind of gonna like just jump into it, but and I always like to hear what people say when I ask them this, but
okay.
Why do you think we dream?
Why do we think we dream? So that's an interesting question. I think part of it is just like a functional role in like just cleaning up your brain at night. So there's like your brain is reorganizing like a bunch of different neurons and structures and stuff based on what you ate, what you saw, like cleaning out just products out of the brain that just come from just thinking. And so sometimes weird like networks are activated in the brain during that time, and so it just is a way. It's I think partly it's just a random process that kind of just evolved as a byproduct of our brains being stimulated by the cleanup process of sleep. So, but me thinks there are other functions. I don't know if there's like. I think we also, since our culture just doesn't really care about dreams that much, like it's just kind of then it might also have that kind of there might be cultural things that we've lost from even just sharing dreams or attributing importance to dreams, and so it had that function back then. I mean, and back thousands of years ago, or even today, but people still view it as like the gods are speaking to you or divine or something like that. And so that kind of gets in the way of figuring out like good ways that it could be a function.
Okay, that was a very well thought out answer. I like
Yeah,
that.
I
I can tell you've thought about it, so that's good. um, well, so related to that last question, so why do you think we can lucid dream then?
hmm And so I think that that is just a byproduct of our evolution, and I guess maybe it's a fluke, but the mind's ability to stay conscious while it's still paralyzed during sleep. So it could be, and it could be. So some people like awake more easily than others, while others just sleep in stupor. And so maybe the like just even differences between people, there can be different levels of wakefulness even while you're sleeping. And so maybe some people just kind of can be neurochemistry or genetics or like environment. They can sort of like be more awake, like the mind, and you can see this kind of also in other phenomenon, like in other human behavior. For example, like blacking out while you're drunk, you can still seem really functional, have conversations, like order food, all this stuff, but your mind is shut down. And so you can see in different kind of human facets that the mind's capacity to be awake or asleep is not always associated with whether the body or the mind or it's kind of like it's like a salad of things that can be tossed around. It's not always like awake or asleep. There's like, yeah. And that's just
Yeah,
kind of like part of being human, I guess. But
man, that's oh man, I'm so glad that you brought up that point. Because I remember what you had told me about how sleep or lucid dreaming can occur pretty much in any state of the brainwaves, like in any of the brainwaves. And there is a study that I actually looked up that I referenced in one of the older episodes, but that's exactly what they came to the conclusion. Like you can have various different levels of consciousness and basically be in a dream state or like an altered
yeah,
consciousness.
I mean, and you can have like you can be totally awake and walking around and be hallucinating dreams outside of you. Like there's many combinations to the human mind, and I guess being lucid is just well, yeah, but it is hard. It's going to take a little bit more research to fully answer the question of why we can lucid dream. Like, why is that even an ability? And why doesn't everyone have it? Like, why is it such a rare thing?
Okay, well that's another question. So do you think there's some people that would just never be able to lucid dream?
You know, I think that is a possibility. Um, uh, I've heard what's the term where you don't have the capacity to generate like daydreams and mental imagery and stuff like that. It has a name, but so I've heard some of those people who have been diagnosed with that condition that they have a really hard time having lucid dreams because they just don't have an imagination.
Oh wow.
Um, um, yep, and so I would say that the majority of people can lucid dream, but there might be a small percentage, whether it's through neurochemistry, situation, like personality, like yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes
I mean, I
sense.
could argue like my brother hates anything to do with lucid dreams, so he's a person that probably can't have a lucid dream because he just finds it utterly boring,
Wow.
which is sad. But
Yeah, I'm like, I can't even comprehend that. How do you find lucid dreams boring? What?
yeah,
Anyway,
whatever.
but okay, yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It just, I don't know. Like, it seems, um, like reading Labarge's work, for example. You know how I like how he explains so well how people can lucid dream. But
Yeah.
it would also make sense that some people can't. Um,
hmm
but okay. Well,
I think a larger percentage of people have had at least one lucid dream in their lifetime, or at least like an episode of sleep paralysis, which I actually think is a type of lucidity.
okay. I agree. I agree. And so, like, let's say if if somebody just happens to stumble upon this podcast and they've never lucid dreamt, or for some reason they can't lucid dream, how would you explain lucid dreaming to someone like that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would you compare it to?
I mean, it would be like if you could take virtual reality and instead of putting it in your goggles, you could go inside the virtual reality, like it was a video game, but you feel like it's inside the video game instead of just doing it control. And then you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yes.
I mean, do you think that is an adequate explanation? Or for Star Trek fans, it's like the holodeck.
Yes. I agree. It's like that, and I would take it a step further though. I would say like if lucid dreaming is kind of like, if dreams are kind of like being in the virtual reality world, lucid dreams would be like directing the virtual reality world.
Yeah, like God mode.
Yeah, like on the go. It's like everything is just kind of happening immediately as you think it. It's really bizarre. Like it's really, really bizarre. And that's actually something I was thinking about.
That's interesting, yeah.
Like, I mean, if it's just kind of like a byproduct of our evolution, it's just like incredible to think about. Like it wasn't even, if it wasn't even intended. But I guess, I mean, I don't know, evolution can be like that.
I mean, I think that there is, since I mean, I believe reality exists like objectively outside of me, and then it's like mediated the sense the filters of my mind. But when you're in a lucid dream, you're just directly with your mind.
Yeah.
It still might feel like you're getting senses, but like this phrase that you said, kind of on the go, which is like kind of co-creating the world as you're playing the game.
Yeah.
I think, and so that's why I think it feels more real or more potent, because it is kind of closer to what. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still inside of here looking out, which is now in lucid dreams we're in there looking out, looking in, looking out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's kind of like the next thing I wanted to get into, that I thought about a couple of days ago. I had a lucid dream where I decided to just talk to any dream character, and some lady, it was some lady in a red shirt. I don't know who she was, but like at least it wasn't anyone's appearance that I recognized from waking life. But basically, I was talking to her, and I was talking to her, talking to me. I was basically talking to myself because I was dreaming all of it.
Yeah.
So, like, I came to this really strange realization inside of the dream that, you know, that I'm both people simultaneously, and so it gave me like a really, really weird feeling where somehow, like, you know, I was looking out through my eyes, talking to this lady, and then suddenly I was just like in third person. It's almost like I came to this realization and it just like separated me. And it was the most bizarre thing, because it's almost like I could get like almost like a sense of consciousness just not being a singular point, you know, just almost like being like a floodlight. Like not like a cool. Yeah, it was so weird, and I just wanted to see what your input on that, because like if you eat something in a lucid dream, it's basically like it's all you, like you're just experiencing yourself in a different way.
Yeah,
and it's so bizarre to think about.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that in a sense, because it's just a little bit bizarre, and I think that, I mean, it's easy to, like, at least for me, it's easy to become like two objects at once or something. But to just fully feel the full perspective of it and still realize that it's still just me. I don't know. It's weird to think that even though something can feel external to me. But yeah, I mean, and that's one of the teachings of the Buddhist monks, the Tibetan Buddhists, that use lucid dreaming, is to kind of, in a way, become the whole dream and feel and what that feels like.
Yeah.
What is it like to be a door?
Yeah. So that's something that we discussed a little while ago on the podcast, where we're like, that's definitely something fun for people that are into lucid dreaming to try, is just to, you know, try to experience different states. And but it makes me think of, because you just referenced Buddhism, and I know Buddhism comes from Hinduism. I know in Hinduism they talk about how you know, all of this is the dreams of Vishnu or Brahman.
Brahman or
Brahman,
whatever.
yeah, the Godhead or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
So it's just it's such a strange feeling to be able to lucid dream and then just realize I'm dreaming all of this, but the experience just feels so visceral and real. And it just makes me think of like maybe like when we're in the waking world in our present reality through meditation. And I've heard some yogis talk about this where it's like through meditation, you actually start to be more aware. I wouldn't say like you can't necessarily feel what like the chair you're sitting on feels, but you just like your awareness almost like expands. And like that's another thing that I wanted to get into is meditation and how it's beneficial for dreams and lucid dreaming. What would you say about that?
I think that it brings your mind to focus on your own mind, like your attention itself. It also allows you to be so meditation. It kind of gives you like this relaxed alertness. So it's not like you freaking drank a ton of coffee, like alertness. But it's not like you're relaxed, like you're about to pass out. It's like some middle state, and so you cultivate that state through meditation over time in various ways, and there's different ways to do it. But I think that's a very similar state to what you need to be able to lucid dream. You need to, because if you get too excited, then you'll wake up, or you'll just stay awake and won't be able to fall asleep. But if you are too relaxed, you're just going to pass out and slip into unconsciousness.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. That's a good way to put it. Now, what if, and I tried this 2 or 3 times, but what if, what would be the benefit of meditating in a lucid dream?
That's a good question. I have had, from my own experience, I've just had really trippy experiences. And sometimes if I close my eyes, I will just wake up. But if I manage to stay closed, it's almost like I have double out-of-body experience. I don't know how to, which I don't believe that I'm literally coming out of my body, but it just feels, I don't know. I think since lucid dreaming is all the mind, it's less easier to get distracted by like stimulus. So you're already like inside awareness. We just need to focus on that. And instead of when you're meditating regularly, you have like all these thoughts of things going on, like sounds outside, birds chirping. In a lucid dream, you're kind of more focused on the attention, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the best answer, but
No, that does make sense. And actually, it's I had a really, I don't know how to explain it, just a really amazing experience after you had brought that up to my attention, as far as like meditating in a dream. And like I remember one of the the only times that I've ever managed to experience non-objective consciousness of any kind is within a lucid dream state. And that's something that you had brought to my attention, and that's actually in that book that you recommended to me, the Tenzin Rinpoche book with the Tibetan yoga and dream yoga. And they call that a wisdom dream, like where it's like, it's almost like you come to a realization of your, like a pure state of yourself. And, you realize that you can still exist without any stimulus, like it's almost like thought itself. It's just,
and whether that stimulus is internal or external, because we have internal stimuli too, like our thoughts, our moods, our personalities,
yes,
our memories, all that stuff is kind of just a chaotic jumble, always fluctuating around. So I think
yes, and I think that's so I think there's great utility in that, like being able to come to that state of mind, because, like the world kind of like just imprints itself onto you both physically and mentally, like daily. So I remember after doing that, after getting to that point, like the next day, I just felt like utterly like refreshed, like just hitting like the refresh button on a computer or something. It felt great.
Yeah.
So
like a good night's sleep.
yes, and it's not only a good night's sleep. It wasn't just my body; it's just like my mind, and just like everything just felt
Mhm.
like clear, And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the great utilities of lucid dreaming.
Mhm.
Now, and we've discussed this at length before, but just for our listeners, um,
Mhm.
what would you say are some positives, like some possible good benefits to lucid dreaming, like and what people might be able to get out of it?
I mean, aside from the fact that it's a type of meditative practice, so I would argue that a lot of the similar benefits that have been proven from meditation itself, which are highly studied, but also at least somewhat applicable to lucid dreams. I think that it can also. I mean, the most obvious one is also like it's artistic stuff. And you're the artist, so but from even for me, just personally, in like small little art things, I do origami, and I have kind of designed some origami pieces in my dreams. Just they just kind of design themselves into, and I can see all the folds, and it just looks sci-fi and just kind of folds itself like in 3 seconds,
Nice,
and I've come up with new pieces that way that just came to me like spontaneously that I had never even considered.
nice.
So and also, but in terms of just general creativity, like the mind just does weird things when you're dreaming. Anyone knows this from dreams. Like anyone who's ever had a dream and woken up and just gone, "What the fuck did I just dream?" Like
Yes,
holy shit. So that in itself has like huge potential for artistic quality, whether it's making pottery or drawing or writing a song. Like I've definitely heard way cool melodies in my dreams and stuff.
yes.
And so, I mean, another benefit that comes is obviously like if you want to become a good lucid dreamer, one of the main things that you want to do is get a consistent, healthy sleep schedule, which and sleep enough hours, which actually has huge impacts on cognition, health benefits like immune system, like just sleeping right. And so I think that goes with the lifestyle of lucid dreaming. Not that I've always been good at that. I have a crazy sleep schedule sometimes, but
Sometimes that
I also
helps.
think, yeah. But I also another thing that I have actually been thinking about lately is when people can't do certain actions that they're compelled to do. So, for example, somebody loves Twinkies, just loves eating Twinkies, but they can't have them or they're going to have a heart attack. And they don't want to die on their kids and their family and whatnot. They can have their Twinkies while they're lucid dreaming. That
Yes,
can provide an outlet. I mean, I would even argue for other stuff like eating, drinking, like people who maybe want to commit a crime, like want to go rob a bank while do it in your lucid dream. I don't know, like,
yes,
and I also think it works for example, a lot of artists be deeply troubled people or just come up with these. I mean, look at horror movies; like they're just sometimes horrific, and that comes out of the minds of people. Like, so some people have all these dark impulses to see monsters or gore or crazy like battles, like and be in night and cut a bunch of heads off. I don't know, and so I think that sometimes if people don't have an outlet for those darker impulses, where I mean, somebody might be like, for example, violent and they play football or they do MMA and then they just go on with their lives and like, and so I think that even from a health perspective or like for prisoners or for anyone who just for people who are trying to lose weight or drinking or anything like that, like it can provide a useful tool to manage kind of those things. But those are a few things. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could think of other benefits, but
yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's probably. I often find myself like trying to sell lucid dreaming to people, and that's like my go-to is the fact that, like, for example, I have a ton of food allergies, but when I lucid
yeah,
dream, I'm just like pigging out on everything. Like, doesn't even.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, and for example, another thing that comes to mind is when you just said that is with food is there's this dish like I'm a chef, I'm an amateur chef, but I'm pretty good I think, and some dishes that my dad used to make before he died that I didn't get the recipe for, no idea how to make. I can still taste it in a lucid dream. So
And that's actually what you just brought up is another good thing.
yeah.
Like I know some people kind of get freaked out when I talk about it, but like seeing dead relatives, that can be very
Yeah,
therapeutic.
even if you don't believe that they're actually like there's a soul and that you're actually talking with the dead. Like I don't believe that, but it's still nice to hug my dead dad. It feels real, even if it's not.
Right. And I agree. And it's like I've told you before about my dead aunt that
Mhm.
I haven't seen since I was 10, but some I can still see her in my dreams, for example, and in a lucid dream you can like interact with them and it's nice. Now some people might say that it's kind of like weird, and it is unusual, because most people can't like or don't lucid dream or aren't into lucid dreaming as much as we are, but it's just nice to know that that's an option.
Um,
Um
I mean, if somebody has a dream of hugging their dead grandpa or something, like that's not considered abnormal. It's when you start to talk about doing it intentionally that people kind of like, oh,
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm glad that you
yeah.
brought that up. It's kind of like, oh, that's a
What
nice
does that say
experience.
about? Yeah, like what does that say about how we feel about agency and responsibility? The fact that dreams, you're kind of they just take a life of their own. You are not responsible. People freaking kill and do all sorts of crazy shit in their non-lucid dreams, and that doesn't mean that they would ever do that. And so it just makes me wonder why we like. It's funny that we don't attach responsibility then, but we somehow, when we do it intentionally, it turns bad. That the responsibility makes it weird, but the non-responsibility makes it somehow okay.
That's such an
Does that
interesting.
make sense? What I'm saying?
No, no, that makes perfect sense. That's such an interesting point to bring up that I actually never even considered before.
Yeah, me neither until we started talking about it. So,
Yeah, that's wow. What does that say about people? I mean, like,
I mean,
I don't think it's wrong to do that, or I wouldn't judge a person if they
I mean,
told
I
me.
personally don't think it's wrong, but when I do bring it up to people, people are like, "Oh, like you summon your dad?" Like it sounds like I'm performing some satanic ritual to like speak with the dead. But I can get that because if somebody was like literally telling me that, I'd be like, cool, we'll
Yeah,
go do that."
I guess like yeah, it depends. I mean, a lot of cultural, religious,
Hmm.
like it really depends. There's a lot of, I mean,
Yeah,
but I do think that it is so like even if they don't bring it up to other people, it's a nice thing to have. I think it's a nice
yeah, it is.
um. So okay, you already mentioned how dreams can feel more real, and you kind of explained why
Mhm.
you think that.
I also point out that sometimes dream can feel less real, so
Yes.
it's not. Yeah, it's a.
So I kind of think of it like I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but it's almost like tuning a radio. You know, like how sometimes you go through your day, and even though you're awake, you're just kind of like there. You're not 100%
Yeah.
with it.
And, and sometimes and I've noticed this in lucid dreams, there's a bandwidth problem.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, and so I can there'll be nights, and let's say I like spent all night drinking or something, and and when I do have a lucid dream, sometimes I can have the lucid dream, but like my capacity to experience certain things within the lucid dream is diminished. Like I'll be blind, for example. So I'm in a lucid dream. I can touch, I can move around, I can fly or whatever. It's almost like there's like like your brain has a reduced capacity to do this or not. Even for me, that I've been doing it for so long.
I agree. But do you feel that, let's say, because like the my favorite method is the wake back to bed method for lucid dreaming, and I feel like let's say if I sleep for 4 hours and then I'm up for 90 minutes and then I go back to sleep, I can have a decent lucid dream. But then
Mm-hmm.
if I wake up after that and if I sleep for 2 more hours after that, like I'll wake up, I'll write down my dream, sleep for 2 more hours, and then wake up again, be awake for 90 minutes, and then take like a 30-minute nap. I'll just have like a really deep lucid dream where it's like I feel like the more iterations that I do,
Mm-hmm.
the better my
Yeah.
like the more tuned in I am into the dream.
Yeah. Which is funny because we always associate, at least in our culture dreaming with nighttime, when in fact the majority of my lucid dreams happen after sunrise. It's like from that like maybe from like 5:30 to like 8:30, and I'll even have lucid dreams all the way into. But I do. I mean, I wonder what that means though. That the frequency sort of increases the more take back to beds you do, which is kind of an interesting. I haven't thought about it before, but I have seen it happen in myself. Yeah.
Well, like I think I don't think it's always the case. Like I agree with what you said. Like a lot of being well rested, being healthy, being like stress plays a role. But I remember this was a while ago where I did do like a whole weekend where I tried to like sleep and then lucid dream and then like sleep and then like wake up, lucid dream. So, but I did that. Like I had like scheduled it to where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this the entire weekend. Like I'm going to do it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I had all 3 days off. But what ended up happening is like I did it and I got into some pretty deep states of lucid dreaming and they were great. But at a certain point, it's like my body just didn't want to keep sleeping. It's like, it may be because I'm so used to it.
If only you could keep doing it.
Yeah. But that brings me to the next question. Because kind of like the length of the dreams just like varies wildly. Have you ever had a dream that felt like it lasted a year or longer?
Maybe not a year or longer, but I've definitely had dreams that felt that they lasted longer than than 8 hours, or when I was asleep, that lasted days. I think the most that I've ever experienced was probably days. So
okay, wow, yeah,
like maybe up to a week. But
now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that happens?
So, I mean, I think that like dreams have this capacity to refill our mind with certain facts that we need. And so even if you're lucid, the mind can still do that. Because I've like, so for example, I've walked into like a dream, and I immediately knew, oh, this is the dream that, like, this is the story that's going on right now.
Yes.
I don't have to participate in it. So I think that the mind has, so that ability to download like information in, let's say, 1 second might seem like, oh, in real life it would take like 10 minutes to explain all of this, but the mind explained it to you in 1 second. So part of that, the mind can give you that information. Part of it can be a memory of time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so let's say you experience 5 subjective, or you were lucid for 5 minutes, but every 1 minute, the brain added the memory of an extra 30 minutes. So in fact, it felt like you were there longer. And we see this in everyday life. Like when you're having fun, time flies. When you're bored,
yeah,
like a minute can seem like, when you're really hungry and you're waiting for the leftovers to heat up, that 1 minute can seem like an eternity.
Yeah.
So our minds have the ability to play and manipulate our perception of time.
Oh man, that's excellent. No, that's just, you're really, really good at explaining things. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think, no, you're right, because there's one particular dream that, well, actually there's like 2 or 3 that come to mind, but there's one that I just remember when I woke up from it, I'm like, it just took me like minutes. Like I had to just sit there and just like slowly remember who I am. And I'm like, oh, this is me. Like this is like,
yeah, isn't that a funny phenomenon?
Yeah, like it freaks me out a little bit sometimes because I'm like, what if I end up having like some kind of like a brain thing where I'm just like having difficulty remembering after waking up? But I don't think that's true.
It happens rarely, but it does happen.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it can happen. Yeah. So, yeah. But
I think I think it happens to like crazy people.
Well,
or already have like a disjointed view of reality, like schizophrenics or delusional.
And I think. The thing is, I often feel like after lucid dreaming, even if it's a long lucid dream, I often feel when I wake up in the morning, I just feel refreshed and somehow, like you said it, more alert, but not in the way that caffeine makes you more alert, but just like actually like almost like tuned in. Like it's almost like I got a break from this reality, or I got to break from this state of awareness. So I'm just like, now I'm here, and it's just like everything just seems crisp. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, the best way I can explain it is like that moment where you wake up, you don't have shit to do, but you're like, you just still want to lay in bed because you're feeling relaxed, but you're awake, like you're ready, like you might be looking through your phone or maybe saying good morning to whoever you're sleeping with or whatever. You feel just nice, like just ready to go with your day and all that stuff. Like that's how it feels to wake up from a lucid dream, even if I haven't had enough sleep. So
yeah, that's weird how that happens. But so then the next thing would be to bring up dreams within dreams.
Dreams within dreams. Okay.
So
I have a good story for that one related to lucid dreaming. So.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So so I think this was last year or the year before. One of the most powerful lucid dreams that I've ever had. It was just so vivid. I didn't have any trouble staying in the dream. I didn't have any trouble doing whatever I wanted.
I love those.
Everything was just going like perfectly. But while I was in that lucid dream, I swore, and I was 100% lucid. Well, you could argue that because of what I'm about to say, but I was 100% lucid in that dream. But I was 100% convinced that I was on vacation with my family, sleeping on the couch. And I was on the couch, lucid, while I was just in my room at home the whole time. And so, I mean, that kind of really did feel like a dream within a dream, because I remember in the first dream, like eating up with my family, the beach, like falling asleep, like us making dinner plans, and I fell asleep on the couch, and then I had the dream within the dream. So,
man.
Yeah, but I would also hesitate to qualify those as two dreams, like nested within each other, and just kind of say that it's all just one dream. It just gives the appearance. It's kind of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's kind of like, yeah, your brain is just really incredible at just switching up information like that, like, and making it. It's just so, yeah. You could just technically,
yeah.
It's just like a scene, like you're just flipping the page or like changing the scene. You're still progressing. It's not like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's almost like if somebody stood up on a theater, they had to play a different, like they had to read a script, but each page was a different character, and the person had no idea that they're playing different characters. I just think it's all one seamless narrative.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Going off of what you just said, it's kind of, and this is a difficult and interesting topic that we've discussed before, but based off of what you just said, it's kind of like it seems a lot of our conscious existence is predicated on memory. So if you had to, and I don't like, I just want to hear what you have to say. If you had to try to explain consciousness, how, like, what would you say?
I mean, like, consciousness is like a canvas or a mirror, and then you have all these things that get drawn or pop up in the mirror, like from the real world, or like we said earlier, like your thoughts here. And so consciousness is just the thing that looks. It's not a thing necessarily. It's just the mirror. And that sounds kind of mystical. And for a more scientific answer, it's just the prefrontal cortex that is linked to all the other parts of the brain. And so in a sense, it's looking outward or upward. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know why I put a direction on that. But I mean, obviously that's not a full answer because it doesn't account for the full. But at its very base, it's consciousness is just being conscious of something, seeing something.
Okay.
And it's just the seeing by itself is the consciousness.
Okay. So like almost like a feedback of some sort.
Yeah, like seeing itself.
Okay.
Awareness being aware of itself.
I can respect that. That's a decent answer.
Yeah, and it's not. I by no means I'm like stuck to that answer.
Yeah,
and I'm sure plenty of philosophers would disagree with me.
Well,
I'm not done exploring quite just yet. So
I think nice. I think it's more like you know how Alan Watts has several really good talks about that, where it's like it's not really something you can explain through words. Just like you can't really explain the taste of like a banana through words. It's just you have to experience it.
You can approximate it, like get close,
right?
And maybe we will have better words in the future. Like it's not. It's just the words right now.
Maybe.
But yeah, like I mean, consciousness is sort of like it arose in evolution way before words did. So
yeah.
It's almost like, and so like, even before any sort of communication or language arose, didn't really have. I mean, and I guess consciousness is also. You could say an animal is conscious. Humans are like conscious. They're aware that they're conscious.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us different.
Yeah.
Maybe some animals can have it, but like an insect is just aware of the perception that it gets. It's not like a feedback loop. And I think that is also a big component that separates our consciousness from animal consciousness, is that self-awareness.
Yeah, and I know that there's only a couple of, like, gorillas aren't like, I know that if you put a mirror in front of them, they'll charge the mirror thinking it's a different gorilla.
Yeah, but some chimps.
But yeah, chimpanzees can do that. Like they'll realize that it's them that they're looking at. Like they'll move and they'll so.
Also, the mirror test though has some flaws because some fish also pass the mirror test.
Well, okay, yeah.
So some animals do have a self model, but I guess we are still. See, and this is where it gets complicated, because you get stuck in like these feedback loops where like, so animals are conscious, and then some animals are conscious that they're conscious, or like conscious that we're conscious about being conscious.
Yes.
if that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, you're conscious of your consciousness, and you're conscious of the fact that you're conscious of your consciousness. Yeah, I gotcha. It can definitely, that's definitely a rabbit hole conversation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
I don't think you can go down too further with any more of those.
Yeah, but anyway, I think that's more than enough to give an idea to the listeners. Oh, okay. So this is another question that I just like to ask people is, have you ever been trying to solve a problem that you just weren't able to really solve while you're awake? And then have you ever had an answer come to you in a dream?
I mean, especially when it relates to like interpersonal conflict.
Okay.
I've definitely had a few times where like I don't know exactly what to do or how to fix this or and then I sometimes won't even be thinking about it in the dream, or I will be, and yeah. I mean, I think it's the same kind of process that gives you those aha moments or like that intuition gut feeling, which science has actually proven can be more right sometimes, because I think our brain has an ability to simulate data when we're not conscious of it.
Yeah.
There's background noise running along.
Yes, I agree. And so yeah, I'm glad that you said that, the aha moment. I love those moments. And that's kind of like how I like to describe lucid dreaming to a person that's never had a lucid dream, is that it feels like an epiphany almost. Like, it's like you just came to, like, you just realize you're dreaming. And it's like, oh, this is all a dream. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time it happened to me. It's like a very powerful like rush.
Yes, sure. Yes. And that's the other thing that you mentioned, like our brains are always scanning. So it's like, and they're really good at figuring things out. Like our brains are just amazing at being able to calculate and kind of like, and simulate things. And I only ask that because it's, sometimes I will use lucid dreaming to like, like, as you know, I practice making art all the time. And as you said earlier, it is a very powerful tool for creative people. I think people in general, it's just a very powerful tool. But something that I got from you is sometimes when you're lucid dream, you can just ask your brain to show you something random or something you've never seen before. And the outcome is usually always interesting. Like I've come to that conclusion that it's almost always interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that some of the things I've seen in lucid dreams I've actually seen somewhere else. Like, there's some things that are just completely indescribable to even just like a sculpture. You're just like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like sometimes, oh man, I don't know if it's just my imagination or my perception of what I see in the dream, but that's one of the things that I really love about making art related to dreams. It's like it'll never be as good as seeing it in the dream, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy doing it. But it's like some of the things that I see in dreams are just like I can't even describe the colors or like the images. It's just like nothing does them justice. No matter how much time I spend on it, it's just like it's incredible. And like
Yeah,
that's something that people that like to lucid dream should definitely try. Just like ask your brain to show you something random. It's totally worth doing. Um, so before we get into your dream stories, because I know you have some really good ones that I want to hear, but kind of like the last question before we go into that is something that let me preface that with something that I think about frequently, especially more so lately for some reason. But so we have our external stimulus, like we were saying earlier, we have, and then clearly it affects us whether we want it to or not. And then we have our internal stimuli, like our thoughts. So something that Alan Moore, the author of V for Vendetta and The Watchmen, one of my favorite quotes of his is that our thoughts and dreams, they are a reality that's different. It's not less or more than this waking reality, but it's like it's the same amount. It's different because your thoughts can push you to act a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just one reality is run on atoms and molecules and whatnot and suns and stuff, and the other one is run on brain. So it's like I would view it as equally important, yes, but I would almost view it as a sub reality to like capital R reality.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
still just as important.
yeah. That's kind of
Sometimes more important because it is our reality. Every single one of us live every day.
yes.
So, and ultimately, they're all one reality to begin with. We
Okay,
just have this kind of illusion of we have a hard time separating it. But I think technology is making that easier. But
I agree. Okay, see, like I didn't even have to ask you the question because you already pretty much answered it. Because I was going to say, like, do you think they're different? And then exactly what you just said is that they're one and the same. It's just the illusion that I guess we have through our individual perception of thinking of them as different.
yeah, I mean, and I think they are different in the same way that like one cell in your body is different from the other one.
Right.
Well,
Kind
no,
of
I
kind of
wouldn't put
like
it
how
this
my
way.
fingers, like my fingers are different from my face, even though they're still me
Yeah,
in a way.
it's still all one reality. Yeah, but they're different parts of it.
Yeah, like different features of the same
Mhm.
thing. Okay. All right. So those are the major questions that I wanted to kind of go over with you because I knew you would have great input on them as you
Yeah.
have. And so now I would ask you to share with our listeners whatever dream story you want to share.
Whatever dream story. I mean, I'll share my first lucid dream just because I like it because it's so kind of bizarre.
Okay.
And so I the first thing I remember is that I'm writing like in this old school like kind of back when slavery was around in America. Like it all looked old like that, like just like farmhouses and people wearing that type of clothes, riding horses and stuff like that. But it turned out that it was in the future, like after some apocalypse. And so this guy owned a farm. Turns out it was a cocaine slave farm, where he's like has all these slaves, and they helped him grow cocaine. And I saw like, I mean, it was kind of gory because he would keep them like in these like glass containers, like to them and stuff. Regardless, that's. But this farmer, and he was like kind of your old like stereotypical American like farmer and stuff. Like he had this son, and so apparently I was supposed to like become friends with this son, and that's why I was there and all that stuff. And so he took me around the dream, like far away, and all of a sudden he says, like out of the blue, he says, "Oh, did you know this is a dream?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I became instantly lucid, and it was like crisp, like I just I mean, to this day, that was one of the most intense experiences of my life. And then he proceeded to point at a number on this giant tree, and I think it was dead actually, but it was this giant white tree, and there was like the year 3794 or something like that.
Wow.
He said, "Hey, so I'm from the year at 3794," and pointed at the tree, and said, "I've been in this dream since 1992. It's actually my birthday." So I thought that was really funny, and so after that, it proceeded to have like I proceeded to kind of explore this world, and that like this sky was purple from like some nuclear like apocalypse, and I was trying to like escape, and there was lots of like, but it was cool to explore this sort of future scenario where it was like an apocalypse, so it was futuristic. People had kind of reverted back down to more earlier times, and so I remember I fought with this bear. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this bear was running after me, and I was like, "Wait, this is a dream. I don't have to be afraid." And so I just like fought the bear and like chased them off. Like I think it was two bears. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Nice. Oh man, that's a great dream.
So that's one of the dreams I thought that was interesting.
That's so cool. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's, you know what that made me think of? It made me think of that Einstein quote. Was it, he said, "I can't imagine the weapons that World War III will be fought with," but was it World War IV is just going to be sticks and stones? Sticks and stones, yeah. It's kind of weird it made me think of, but
kind of sad to think about, but yeah.
That's cool. That was a great dream. That's, oh man. I almost feel like, sometimes I feel like my mind or my brain is just trying to mess with me, you know, like for one reason or another. Like what you just said, it's kind of like your mind was just like, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're dreaming. You should know this."
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because what does that say about our mind's capacity to still be part of us, but sort of do something that is against us or surprises us?
Yeah.
What is this other part? Like when we refer to, "Oh, my brain did this," or "My brain wouldn't wake me up," like, why do we separate the self from the brain?
I don't know. I think it's because
in reality, I mean, like what we consider to be ourselves is the brain.
I think, right, I agree, but I think a lot of it has to do with intention also, like you were saying earlier, like because there's definite ways to kind of like hijack, I don't know, someone's awareness, or I don't know, their intention even, I would say. Yeah, but that's a great, I love that dream. Yeah.
I'm glad you liked it. I don't know if I had shared that with you in a while, so.
Yeah, I do remember you sharing that. I just didn't remember all the details.
Yeah.
And then, okay, other than that, did you have any other dreams that you'd like to share that our listeners might appreciate?
What's a good one? So this one is one I had recently, and it was actually what is trippy about it is that it was almost like an hour and a half, 2 hour long lucid dream. And so a lot of things happened. I didn't even think you could lucid dream for that long. Like I thought that there was like a cap at like an hour max or something like that. But I was actually kind of sick at the time. And so I think that might have, and it was also a nap, like a 2 hour, 3 hour nap and stuff. And so, but I was at this, like, and so I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. So I use my lucid dreams for that. But I was at this, like, I think I told you parts of this, but I was at this spaceship, and it was like huge spaceship, like probably like, I mean, as big as like the Empire State Building or bigger. Like it had hundreds of floors, and like and so there were a ton of aliens there, and so they all had different biospheres. So I looked out this window, and there were these giant squid that they were doing battle with in space, and they all had like a little baby face that was just like looking and smiling, or like goo gagaing, and it was like scary, and like I almost started to fall through the glass, because I do that in lucid dreams a lot. I go through glass just for fun, and yeah, and I almost started floating in space, spiraling towards like the weird beak that was underneath the chin of this like squid baby thing in space. and it was gonna like swallow me up, but I was able to like swim through space, which is not actually possible. um, uh, and yeah, and so I went, and so I started meandering through this ship, and it was huge, and I was seeing all these different cool aliens that I just can't even begin to describe. Some were huge, and parts of the ship were like had different atmospheres for them to like breathe and stuff. So I get to the bridge, the like main control center of the bridge or the ship, and there's this guy in the middle, and this place is huge, like an opera house, like the whole, and like he's just sitting on his chair in the middle, and he just like I just got this sense that he was just so lonely because he was burdened with this war that he had to like fight for humanity, and so I'm like looking at the back, and everyone's like super far away from him, like doing things in their consoles, and so I go up to him, and he looks older and kind of has peppered hair, and has a huge scar like through an eye, and he like looks at me, and I realize that it's an older version of me, and he grabs me like by the neck, and he says, "What the fuck are you doing here? You're not supposed to see this yet, and but this is 100 years from now," and he's like, "You need to get out of the bridge." And I remember these two guards like picked me up, dragged me out.
Dang.
And I don't remember. I think I meandered through the ship or something else, and then I just or like woke up or something.
Oh man.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
That's a great dream. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna draw those baby squids. That baby squid things.
I want to, like, it was like they were like these red squid, but like they had like, it was almost like a mashup between a squid and an octopus.
Okay.
And they just like, wherever the face should be, there was just like a little like baby face.
Oh,
like just
man.
placid baby face or making faces. And I think I meant to send this to you, but
That's great. Jeez. That's another interesting thing is that like a lot of the different people that I talk to on the forums say that every now and then they'll have a dream where it's like they're going somewhere, but it's almost like their brain doesn't want them to go there, or like their mind is like, it'll just stop them. It'll like, something will happen. Mm-hmm. That's so strange. Yeah, that's such
strange to me. Yeah, like even I've tried to like defend myself like in dreams and like try to punch someone or something, and it'll be like I'm slugging through like ice or something, and it's sluggish and I can't.
Yeah.
Or I've tried to use like lightsabers in dreams, and they just don't work. They just don't, like, I can get them lit and stuff. They just don't work on anything, not even like a tree.
Oh man, that's so. Jeez. I've told you about, like, I've had a similar dream where it's like, well, not similar in the sense that I get denied access. It's like, and I've had this like 3 or 4 times now where like there's this park that's next to this water that's close to some like large buildings and some skyscrapers, and it almost feels like something like on the shore of like New York or something, and there's a park, and then every time that I find myself in this park and I become lucid, it's like out of nowhere fucking like vans of like Secret Service, like mind police, like just show up and they start chasing me down, and they try to make me wake up, and I'm like I'll end up like running away and like fighting them off, and then they always eventually like make me wake up. I was like, what is that about? That's
Can I share? So speaking about dream police, can I share one last dream?
Yeah, of course, please.
Yeah, so it started out kind of lucid, but I was like, I had this very powerful machine, and it was like this super technology that just allowed you to do anything in the dream that you wanted. And it was like worth trillions and quadrillions of dollars, and like all these dream characters were after it. So I am like running through the countryside, and I come to this city. It's a very small city. It looks small from the outside, but it's actually like this time city where all the times converge at once. And so there were people from like, there were aliens walking around. There were people like Native Americans walking around. There were just like people from different ages walking around. And you could see, you know how when you go to an airport or like a train station, it has all the times for like the different places.
Yeah.
So it was like that, but it was almost like a city for all the intersections between all the time periods.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I thought that was interesting. But so I'm led through this chase throughout this whole city, where I have like this shop, and like apparently I'm like an important person that like does all these, and I'm like I'm like Lucid, but I'm just going along with the story.
Nice.
And so I'm like this like tech worker that builds machines, and so I have some people that like follow me, and they're like trying to hide me, and like take the dream cops away and stuff like that. And I remember this one time I like used the machine, and I was like, make me invisible from the cops. So I'm like standing beside this other dream character, and she can see me because I had been talking to her, but none of the cops can see me, and they're interrogating her about where I am.
Nice.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm completely invisible to them. And like the lady's like kind of old, and she's just like, "Oh, well, he's right here." And so she like grabs me, and they're like, the cops are like, "Frick!" And so all of a sudden, I asked the machine to like protect me. So this like little ball comes out of it was like a little suitcase thing, and just like shoots all the cops, and they just like drop dead. And then I was able to escape and like hide the box, like hop to another dream or something, and I don't remember what happened after that.
Oh
I
man.
used that machine quite a bit in my dreams.
Oh, that's great. Jeez, like that. Oh man, you could easily like turn that into some kind of a story or
like a short story or something for sure.
Yeah, that's like you have really like your dream stories are definitely short story worthy. And
yeah, for sure.
Oh man, that's great though. Like that's why I love hearing dreams. You know, they're so unexpected, like just out of nowhere.
Nowhere. It does make you wonder, like, if we could explore all those different possibilities and what people in 1,000 years of studying dreams might think.
Yeah, and I know people have attributed this quote to many different things, but I often think about like when Nikola Tesla said that the day that humans start to study non-physical phenomena, they'll make more leaps than all the previous centuries of study combined. It's just,
I mean, it's to kind of add to that a little bit is that a lot of people who like have made up inventions, or come through like mathematic breakthroughs or scientific breakthroughs or stuff like that, have actually used these types of states, whether it's like falling asleep and using hypnagogia or sleep paralysis or actual lucid dreams.
Yeah.
So I think people like like a lot of people who have come up with better ways to understand reality or good ideas have also been studying those types of things.
I agree.
Incorporating them into their lives.
I agree. And it's not like you said earlier, it's not that their answer is given to them from an external source or anything like that. It's just that I think that dreams or lucid dreaming also can give you kind of like a different perspective. You know, sometimes you just need to look at the problem in a different state, and it can give you the answer. And I know, there's a bunch. There's Einstein came up with, or it helped him solidify his theory of relativity in a famous dream that he had written in a journal. There's also the guy with the periodic table. I forget his name. Was that Mendeleev? I'm not sure. He was working on the periodic table, but he wasn't able to completely like visualize how to organize it. And then the answer came to him in the dream, where he saw the answer on a table. So I think it was just his brain at some point managed to kind of like figure it out. But Rene Descartes, you know, like that's an obvious one. He had like a whole series of dreams that he kept in a journal. But
I mean, Isaac Newton would, no, not Isaac Newton. Wow, Thomas Edison.
Okay. Would
put little bells or whatever like on his hands or something, and then like start to pass out, and so like he would go into this like semi like half awake, half asleep state and see all these images, but then once he finally went into fall asleep, bells would wake him up because his arms fell, or I think he would put balls in his hands too, and when they fell, he would wake up, write down everything he could, and a lot of his technologies came from that process.
Nice. Oh, that's cool, man. I don't really like Edison, but that's a cool story.
Okay, we'll have to talk more about that later.
Yeah. One thing I did want to, this is actually something that I sketched out this morning. This is based on the dream from a couple of days ago. I wanted to show you because I figured you'd appreciate it. So, this was,
so cool.
Like, I was basically I was kind of like hopping through these planets that had like conveyor belts, like they're like these conveyor belts on them. And then there was this planet that was like, these things were like rotating around it like on a conveyor belt, but they kept like popping up out of the ground and like breathing and like exhaling this white smoke.
Okay.
And they looked like,
Okay.
they almost looked like they had like these weird little robotic duck faces underneath. But like, it was so strange because I wanted to show it to you because I figured you'd appreciate how like dreams can be so weird and make sense while you're in them. Because I remember like hopping from like, and there were these little planets. They were like, they weren't that big. They were probably like the size of like, I don't know, like a
Dragon Ball Z style.
Exactly. Yeah. Like what was it? King Kami or something. Yeah. Like, or King Kai. Yeah. King Kai's planet. Thank you. I love the reference. But basically like it was like rotating and like these things, like they kept like coming up like one at a time and it was going like, and it was like breathing. And I was like, oh, that's just that was just the lungs of the planet. And like, it made perfect sense in my dream logic. You know, it's like, oh yeah, that's just the planet breathing. That's how it breathes. And I just thought it was like, what?
Dream logic is weird. And you know something about dream logic that I find fascinating? The craziest thing can happen to me and I don't turn lucid.
Yes.
Something small or even nothing will happen and like, I mean, the time will be wrong or something small and I'll catch it. And I just wonder why the mind, I mean, I guess it goes back to attention. Like, why does it pay attention to some things? And why does it pay attention to false images of you and what you are? And,
you know, I think
you could be a fireman one day.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like, one of the other people I had interviewed, he brought up that he's like, I've had dreams where like, a banana, like a human-sized banana will walk up to me and shake my hand and be like, "Hey, I'm Bob." And then like, and he had a dream where he like just sat down on a bench in a park and he's like, "This is a dream." Like this, that's like, and I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that like the normal mundane things that we see regularly, it's just that our brain has scanned them so many times and it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like I know exactly what that's like. So like if it's a little off and you're...
Yeah, it might be more tuned to those changes, but if some real banana guy were about to walk into your room right now though, see that's the difference between reality, because if a banana man walked into your room right now, you would fucking cry and you could probably shit your pants or something. Like that would be kind of weird and totally out of. I mean, you'd probably think you're dreaming.
Yeah.
But the mind still has that extra capacity to make you believe that the banana is completely normal.
Yes.
Like nothing wrong. The banana man shaking your hand is part of.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. Well. Hey. I thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're always welcome back because you always have something interesting. Nice. Yeah, you always have something interesting to say about dreams or in general, honestly, you have really interesting topics to talk about. But if there's any closing thoughts that you would maybe want to tell the lucid dreamers that may be listening to this or people that may be interested in lucid dreaming, is there something that you would want them to know that you think that they should know?
I mean, if you're interested in lucid dreaming, I would say get into it, stick it out, even if it's weird or rough at first, because the rewards are way worth any effort that you will ever put into it. It will just make you a happier person. So dream away.
Nice. Well spoken. I agree. Excellent advice. There you have it, folks. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Let's Dream podcast. And if you have any dream stories that you would like to share with us, you can do so at contact@letsdreampodcast.com or any of the social media. Facebook, it's Let's Dream Podcast. Instagram is Let's Dream Podcast. Twitter, it's Let's Dream Pod. But if you just want to share something with us, if you have interesting stories, or even if you'd like to come on to the podcast, let us know. Just send us an email or message, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.